All right. Hello, everybody. You might be used to that music. Hopefully you heard our quick little ditty there. Got some background pop, getting the vibe going before we have this great show today with Chris. We're going to be talking spot instances and all the latest updates that we've came out with to help you manage those environments. So just a quick shout out. Stephanie is not here today with us. She is on a plane and she is, wishes everyone the best and is sad she couldn't make it. So as you might say, the teachers have left the students alone with them in the classroom today. Myself and Chris running the show, which is a good segue for Chris. Chris Foote, my guest, he is a principal go-to-market specialist and business development manager for our Spot team. Chris, why don't you take a few minutes and give us kind of your intro story, what you've been doing on AWS, what brought you to this point?
Yeah. So first of all, born and raised in Chicago. I've been here my entire life. But I've been in AWS now for about 5 years. I've got an infrastructure background, and started as a solutions architect. From there, I joined the EC2 Spot team as a specialist architect. And then I became a business development manager, or we like to call it go-to-market specialist for EC2 Spot. Really, I spent a lot of time talking about how to help customers save money, which is pretty cool because everybody wants to talk to me. But that's pretty much the story in a nutshell. Also got a networking background from back in the day, so I'm a little bit of a networking nut. But yeah.
Yeah, well, this is the right show to be on if cost optimization and saving money is your specialty. So we're very thankful for have you here. Chris is being a little bashful. I know he's had some great success working hands-on with customers and how to utilize all the latest features of Spot, and someone our account teams bring in regularly to help with those engagements. So, kind of just you mentioned Chicago. I would call out. We talked about it here. I'd be remiss from Chicago myself a little bit. So it was fun chatting with you this week and. My quick little Chicago story. My first day of kindergarten, I got my shoes stolen from me, but it wasn't one of those situations where, someone comes up to you and is like, "Hey, give me your shoes." It was kind of lame. We were just like playing on one of those kid mats, and it was snowy outside, so they make you take your shoes off. I put them in a cubby, and then I came back 2 hours later, and they're gone. And they were some nice like Shack shoes, those old Spaldings that were like just bricks on your feet back in the day. So I was sad, but that's my Chicago story, man.
Those are hard to come by, man.
So Chris, you have a lot of experience in Spot, like we talked about. Some folks here on the show are more familiar with it than others. Maybe just kind of give us a quick, like 1 or 2 minute precursor on why a customer might look at Spot and some of maybe the best use cases they could leverage for that.
Yeah. I know we did a segment on Spot before, but maybe a quick recap, right?
Yep.
So what Spot comes from the concept of, if you think about EC2 or Elastic Compute Cloud, one of the expectations of customers is, when they launch a server, they want to have it available, within seconds or sometimes single digit minutes. And, the requirement for that is we need lots of spare capacity, like crazy amounts of spare capacity, just to make that available for customers to, sell servers in an on-demand fashion. And so, seeing that we need all of this spare capacity, we decided, hey, we can create this interesting win-win scenario where we can actually sell that spare capacity at a really significant discount, like up to 90% off, since we're going to have it anyway. But it does come with the caveat that, if we need that capacity back, we could take that back with a 2-minute notification. And depending on what other features you use, you can actually get more of a notification, advance notice than 2 minutes. But that's really the fundamental proposition of Spot. It's excess capacity in EC2 that we sell at a discount. Because of that nuance that we like to call the Spot interruptions. We take that capacity back. We ask the customers leverage them for fault tolerant workloads or ideally stateless workloads. Those tend to be the best for Spot. So you generally don't want to have like data persistence on those nodes. But typical use cases we see containerized workloads, very, very good with this strong integration story there, both with AWS tooling as well as third-party partners. Any kind of batch analytics. The nice thing about Spot is it's a little bit different than like Savings Plan, where Savings Plan you're making a 1-3 year commitment, and Spot you're not making any commitment at all. So for customers with elastic workload, right? Then it becomes a very powerful tool in terms of letting you scale in ways maybe you couldn't do economically. So really powerful for HPC applications. I said batch workloads, analytics, machine learning, especially the training part of that. We have an integration with Spot Training with SageMaker, CI/CD. I mean, the list just goes on. Yeah, but anywhere that you need a bursty, spiky, fault-tolerant workload, you need lots of compute for cheap, Spot is probably going to be the best solution for you.
Very cool. Yeah, you had mentioned for workloads that are fault tolerant. I think what our data shows something like 5% or less of the instances in the last 90 days have been interrupted. So,
Yeah.
very high likelihood, depending on what instance type you're using, that you won't even hit that issue. And I think kind of just what I've seen, I don't know if you want to give kind of your unofficial take on the spot market, but typically I tend to see like the GPU bound, like P type instances as being more of a likelihood for interruption than maybe some like your classic like compute optimized C machines or your memory optimized R machines or like general purpose Ts. Any other kind of thoughts on that before we segue into some of the other topics?
Yeah. So yeah, for GPU enabled instances, I mean, those are in extremely high demand, especially right now. And but we do have customers that are leveraging Spot for GPU enabled instances. If that's a desire, we usually ask customers to, first of all, any Spot workload should be instance flexible. So instance type flexible, family flexible, size flexible. But initial, also if it's a GPU enabled instance, time flexibility, region flexibility. These are all things that are going to be important if you absolutely need it for your workload. But to kind of talk about the spot market for a moment. So when we look at spot interruptions, you're right; they actually infrequently happen. You said over 95% of the time, a spot instance is terminated because a customer is done with their work. So they gracefully wrap that up. But if you're going to be well architected, you want to always be ready for the chance that something could possibly fail or be taken away. And so we ask customers to build in interruption handling into their application. We can talk about that a little bit later, if you want to. But the spot market it's pretty much broken down into pricing that's based on long-term supply and demand on a per instance type. And so, we ask customers to leverage as many instance types as possible. The more instances that they leverage, the less likely they'll be interrupted if they're using some of the tooling, native tooling in AWS.
That's I think, yeah, perfect transition to kind of one of the newer features we knew you're being expert on to talk about. Putting a link here in the chat for everyone to check out while Chris kind of walks us through it and talks about it. But you want to take a few moments and keep us up to speed on the spot placement score and really what that's helping customers do?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, one of the best practices for Spot is being as instance flexible as you can, right? So, we have some customers that they say, hey, my application runs on an M4 and nothing else. And we encourage you to maybe think outside of the box a little bit. What about an M5? What about a C series? What about an R series? What about more instance types? And over time, they build this list of all these instances that they might want to leverage. The next question is, well, what's my experience going to be like? Do I have enough instances on my list? And sometimes it requires testing to accomplish that, right? Some customers took months just testing if their configuration, is going to work. Or they're trying to figure out if they want to go into a new region and trying to figure what their experience is going to be like in the spot market there. And what the spot placement score does, it really reduces the time to get those insights. So what a customer will do is they'll basically input their configuration as well as what capacity, their desired capacity they're looking for spot. And the spot placement score will return a score from 1 to 10. A higher score being more likely that configuration will launch. So it's great because it really gives customers like an idea of like what their success will be. And there's a couple of ad tech customers that I'm working with who they're looking to expand into different regions, and they wanted to know, if they're if they're going to get the capacity they're looking for. So they started using the spot placement score there, and I think this was circa October, and they wanted to get insights, by November, right? So it was pretty handy in helping them get really quick turnaround on terms of what they were going to see. Oh, Biddle, I think you're muted.
Give me the Zoom award for failure of the year, right? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, thank you. No, folks in the comments, check out that post. It's a pretty good job walking through the UI that is built to help accommodate what Chris was talking about.
Mhm.
Um, I always used to have customers look at like the Spot Instance Advisor link that was kind of like built into the UI of the AWS website, not like in the console bound. But I really like this feature a lot more because it's much more integrated and gives you like a one view of different regions at once. So I don't know if any other thoughts you have on that, but that's what some of the customers I've worked with have found really helpful with it thus far.
Yeah, the Spotance Advisor, that's like the OG tool, that we've all like loved and we still use. Like, I think that's still a great place to go to just get an initial take on like a hot take on like, is this going to be interrupted anytime soon? Because it gives you like a 30-day like average over like, what percentage of, instances in that particular family in region have been interrupted. So I still encourage customers to look at it. I still look at it just to get an idea of like you mentioned, like GPU enabled instances. What's that looking like right now? But it's cool because you can still look in other regions and things like that. So it's still a good place to start. Totally.
Cool, man. Yeah. And so kind of switching gears here, like I said, we have a few different spot updates that are new within the last just, 6 months alone. Another piece here that we really want to spend some time on is the attribute-based instance selector,
Mhm.
helping our customers really refine like the amount of CPU and memory for these spot instance workload needs. I'm going to put that in the chat here for everyone to take a look at. But Chris, why don't you kind of take us away what you think on that and how customers are best leveraging it?
Yeah, so that's something we're really excited about because going back to spot best practices, right? So, you're figuring out what works for your workload. You're building a list of maybe up to 20 different instances. And that becomes an auto scaling group or a fleet configuration. Then reInvent comes around and we launch, and now we're at almost 500 different instance types. And you're thinking, wait, are these still the best instances, for my configuration? Like, and now it's out of date, right? And, we release instances so frequently, it can be tough for any customer to keep up. What the attribute-based instance selection does is it allows you to express your requirements as a set of attributes. So think, you need so many if it's a containerized workload, if you're running Kubernetes, you need so many vCPU per node, so much memory per node. You may not care about the underlying instance type. You just want to know on a per task basis, how many vCPU and how much memory I need, to attribute there, right? So you really just give it those different attributes. You can define storage types. You can set ranges. Maybe your application needs a minimum of 8 vCPUs, but on the other hand, you don't get much more value than like maybe 64 in a node in that case, right? So you have a lot of flexibility in terms of how you express your requirements. Behind the scenes, what the tool is going to do is it's going to find all of the instance types and it's going to search the latest and greatest list and basically curate a list for you, all of the instances that work for your requirements. So it really helps a couple of different things. First of all, it makes it a lot easier to do spot best practices. And it's really good for instance flexible workloads. With Spot in particular benefits quite a bit on that. But we also offer this via programmatic access. So now what happens is you can future-proof your application because you don't have to go back and continue to modify your auto scaling group configuration. It'll always pull that latest and greatest list for you. So it's really powerful. Like it's great for a variety of different workloads. Like I said, anything that's instance flexible, Spot or not, auto scale. I mean, not just auto scaling groups, but like savings plan is also an instance flexible type structure, right? So in anywhere you're going to use any of those purchase options, it's pretty effective. Containers, big data, CI/CD. It's pretty powerful for all of those, and it's good at saving time.
Yeah, and kind of what I've gotten some feedback from the customers, love to get your perspective, is it seems like we've done a better job, and we're always taking feedback, right, in the effort of being vocally self-critical, one of the OG Amazon leadership principles, always taking feedback to kind of continually develop these products. But it's done a good job of integrating more like automation infrastructure as code, like launch templates and launch configurations into it. So like you said, I think it can kind of be more self-sustaining and healing and be launched within your environment. It's not so much of a like a one-off selection where you're creating like fleets one off and hoping that they stay up. Like we're trying to integrate it much more with that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean the fewer configurable changes that a user has to make, the less likely that they're going to make a human error, and do something like that. I know for me, it's like usually the problem is usually between the chair and the keyboard. So and I'm long past my my programming days, but yeah, no, totally. I mean, you think about infrastructure as code, making as much automated. I mean, that's really the way that we're going. I mean, even going back to the spot placement score, we offer programmatic access for that as well. And I think we predict there's some customers that they're going to run it before they run their workload. We have some that actually leverage it multiple times a day, just to kind of finger in the wind, right? And that's an automated process for them. So yeah, no, we're excited to see how customers are going to use these different tools, and making them available, via like CLI and programmatic. These are the best ways to do it.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I get asked a lot too with different customers I speak with, like specifically ones who are maybe more earlier along in their cloud journey and are trying to develop like their cloud financial management practices and best ways to cost optimize. Like I'll get asked, what's a good spot I can start with? Bad spot joke, pun intended there. But what's a good spot I can begin with to do like labs with my teams, get them comfortable with this and kind of a low risk environment? So I'm putting in the chat right now a lab that we found to be pretty helpful. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes that helps you step by step set up a auto scaling group with Spot. I
Mhm.
don't know, Chris, if you have any other shout outs, kind of like the learning process recommendations you have for folks who haven't necessarily already started with Spot.
Yeah. So something my team does, is we work with the website called EC2 Spot Workshops. And they're actually self-guided labs, across a variety of different use cases, and it's constantly updated by my team. So if you want to get hands-on with leveraging Spot, and EKS, that's available as well. EMR is a use case. There's an AIML use case, ECS. There's a variety of them, and it's constantly updated. Certainly, I think we got a link we're going to share too to how to get in touch with us. But a lot of times we'll run customers through them. We'll make it a part of an immersion day. I think hands-on is probably one of the best ways to like get acclimated with Spot, because a lot of times it's a confidence thing, right? You're like, oh, this is it's not as scary as you may think, once you get your hands on with it. You see how infrequently you're interrupted. I know there's the cases of people who like have their Spot instances on, they're just sitting there like for like a month or something like that. But yeah, I would say that's probably one of the better websites to go to, but there's a lot of them out there. Yeah.
Great recommendation. Yeah, always good to start with something small you can get your hands on, build with the labs, and then eventually you're the next Spot expert, maybe teaching
Mhm.
us something here on the show. So good stuff, man. And just to shout out real quick, AWS Skill Builder. If you check that out on the old Google interwebs, you see we've updated a lot of just random learning content for folks outside of Spot. Folks are trying to get brought up more in the cloud. So yeah, Chris, I mean, we got some time here left here. I know we want to segue into some of the customer stories, some of the things that you've worked with and kind of been able to develop success for. Want to take a few moments and give you the opportunity to speak through some of those. I know Skyscanner was a pretty good win for you.
Mhm.
Kind of go ahead and tell us how that manifested and what was key about it. And folks can follow it here in the chat.
Yeah, yeah. So Skyscanner is definitely one that my team helped to work through. But so Skyscanner is an online travel booking site, and they're Europe based, and they actually run the front end of their site on Spot. And it's also Kubernetes based as well, so it's a containerized front end. They think about it's an elastic use case, right? So they have a seasonal usage. If it's travel season, they're going to see more demand than maybe other parts of the day or of the year. And what they found is that leveraging Spot, first of all, they're able to save up to 70%. They're leveraging about 40,000 cores a day on Spot, in auto scaling groups. I think the cool thing about the Skyscanner story is they started before the capacity optimized allocation strategy was released. And if anybody that doesn't know what that is, basically, if you're leveraging EC2 fleet or Spot fleet or auto scaling groups, the capacity optimized spot allocation strategy will leverage real-time capacity insights and historical data to intelligently choose instances that are the least likely to be interrupted. And so it's extremely helpful for customers looking to reduce interruptions. The thing you have to remember is the capacity optimized strategy. It can only look at the instance types that you allow it to choose from. So once again, we ask customers, go as wide and broad as your instance diversification strategy can allow. Sometimes you oversize and you just say, hey, we can give it more CPU memory, typically won't break the application. That's what Skyscanner did. And they went from 300 interruptions a day to between 10 and 15. So they saw massive improvement in their spot experience by leveraging that. And through that, right, it becomes, there's more places they can leverage spot, right? So then that means they save additional money in there. So it was a pretty powerful use case. And it's also illustrative of the integration with Kubernetes. Interruption handling is built into the application. There's an interruption handler that they leverage that automatically drains and cordons nodes when they see a spot interruption or the interruption notification occur. And so, yeah, it's fault tolerant. It's automatically handling interruptions. They're intelligently, automatically, dynamically picking the best instance for their fleet. So, yeah, it's a pretty cool story. And it's in the chat. So, I definitely encourage customers to read about it.
Yeah, one of the things I like about that story is, the business case of what that customer is providing. Skyscanner, right? They're providing kind of almost, I don't want to call it like a spot market for travel, right? But
Mhm.
in a way they are, right? So they're kind of leveraging technology to provide a really good cost optimized experience for what their customers are doing, getting the best travel deals and flight options
Mhm.
with maybe remnant hotel inventory, flights, things like that. So kind of a good marriage there, if you will. Very cool story, man.
Yeah.
Um, and you have another pretty powerful story that I know you worked in depth on that I think customers would love to hear about, and kind of what went on with that with Huddle, right?
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah,
pull that in
Huddle
the
Algebra
chat.
Sports. That one is near and dear to my heart because I worked on that both as an essay and as well as a BD. Um, but so Huddle, Midwest based, but they're a sports and video analytics company. They cover over 180,000 teams, all 30 NBA teams, high school sports, collegiate, professional sports. And so they do video analytics. So, basically what they're doing is they're capturing video from these games. And, they're allowing you to basically pick out what were the moments that were pivotal in a game, right? Maybe you find that, hey, you know what, your average in hitting 3-pointers, is only like 20-30%. Maybe you should drive to the hole more often or something like that. Or it might just be picking game highlights, right? As a review, and sending that home to the parents. Picking out which student was able to basically run the ball in, and so they do a lot of video transcoding. They have a lot of seasonal usage. What they saw is they were I think it was like 10,000 servers. It was on a Friday night is their peak. So they go pretty high, and elastic compute is something that they're requiring. And also, if you think about all the things that happened these last couple of years with the pandemic, they're looking to save money. And they made a couple of changes. The first one is leveraging EC2 Spot. So going from on-demand to Spot, they saved about 70% off of their compute on average there. I think they're saving about $100,000 a month, which is pretty significant, for them. And then they also had a homegrown instance provisioning service. And they moved from that to auto scaling groups and leverage the capacity optimized allocation strategy as well. And just through migrating to AWS native tooling, they were able to save another 28% on their workload. So they saw massive cost savings there. And they've been on a cost optimization journey for a little while now. If you read the blog post, there's actually another one that was a little bit earlier, a few years ago, where they went through an S3 cost optimization journey as well. But they're constantly looking for ways to innovate and save money. And they're taking advantage, all of our best native services around Spot best practices. leveraging multiple instance types, multiple families, multiple sizes. Yeah, and it's pretty awesome. It's pretty dope. I'll say that. Yeah.
So Huddle was maybe used to see that the Bears should trade Trubisky, right? Is that what you're telling me?
I will neither confirm nor deny that.
That's good stuff, man. I know I saw Huddle actually, I think on a few of like local high school sports like
Mhm.
pages in my area when I was following football this season. So always cool to see some local stuff being hit up with AWS also. Um, yeah, no, I mean, we got a few minutes here. Want to kind of just give folks an opportunity to hear about any kind of tips and tricks, hacks, things that you think we didn't get a chance to cover that would really help their journey. I'll give one real quick to start. I was doing an engagement last night actually with one of our customers in Singapore who does ride, like kind of like Uber type stuff, but isn't Uber. And one of the questions came up with Spot is like, how do I know that I'm using best practices besides just like capacity allocation? Are there other things I should be aware of with my Spot groups that could make it fail? And I always like to just kind of take it back to make sure you're using like the right security groups with your Spot fleet that match up with like your VPCs or other configurations within your launch template, because I found this out when I was doing labs years ago the hard way. Is like it's not just picking the instances and launching it. Like you can actually have it where you throw them up there and then it says it failed to initiate because there was issues with either like the AMI, you didn't accept the terms of agreement for the AMI you selected, or like security group didn't match with your subnets and VPCs. And we do a good job letting customers know when launching that through the console interface if those are going to hit snags. But if you're kind of using more of a command line function and running scripts and then kind of setting and forgetting and walking away from the screen, those are just some things that I found to be considerate of. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I'll say accepting the terms of the AMI. It's a pretty big one. I say like legal terms are like the eighth layer of the OSI model. So I'm being a networking guy again, but yeah, no, totally. I'm thinking of tips and tricks for customers. You know, I would say you want to automate as much as possible. Certainly, if it's a containerized workload, and if you're leveraging EKS in particular, leverage a lot of the integrated tooling there. The less you have to redesign, the better. That would be a big, that'd probably be the biggest secret there as well. And then just work backwards from, your requirements. Like if you've got that application that you've used a particular instance type on and you've always done it that way, reevaluate those requirements. Why are you using, an M5 or actually probably an M4, like, 4XL, right? Do you really need those requirements? Don't be afraid to use older instances too. I'll say that what we typically see in the spot market is we launch newer instance type. Customers go to the latest and greatest. We expect them. We want them to do that, but that leaves a large vacuum of capacity in older generations, right? So don't be afraid to add older instances as well too. You'll find that it'll improve your experience, assuming your application can obviously tolerate it. But yeah.
Yeah, good tip, right? I mean, in normal on-demand world, reserved instance, savings plan, right, where you're not leveraging that spot, kind of would be counterintuitive, right? We want you to typically go to the latest generation, but when you're living in this spot world, right, it kind of puts strategy on its head a little bit and opens up the world to earlier instance types that you might not traditionally use just because the discount's so low or so
Yeah.
high, I should say. Another kind of consideration I have with Spot too is, when you're looking at building a workload that is going to be available to run on Spot, it opens up, depending on what the task is that the job's doing, right? Are they like typically analytic functions that maybe run for like 20 minutes? Well, now
Mhm.
that you're on Spot, maybe you can look at, from a cost consideration, sizing that up with a much higher compute power than you traditionally would, getting that job done that normally takes 20 minutes, getting it done in like 6, 8, 7 minutes, right? And the net is, even though you're using a more expensive instance with that spot market and the fact that it takes less time to do, a huge cost savings. So something to think about, guys. Um,
Yeah, there's
but
there's a use
yeah,
case out there for Western Digital, where they were able to like scale up and add more compute, and they went from like I think 3 weeks to get a processing job done to like 8 hours. So throw more compute at it. It's a lot of cheap compute you can use, so you can reduce time to insights.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we're up on time here. Really, thank you for joining us, Chris. And just want to call out next week's episode. Stay tuned. Yeah, Steph joining in the chat looks like maybe. Oh, All right. Sorry, we're running out of time. We got another live show coming up here, but we'll try and answer any questions we missed here on next week's episode. Thank you so much, everybody. We appreciate you.
Thanks all.